F-1 Sensation is not one, but two significant endings on the Famicom. First, this is the final original Konami game for the system. It's not quite the last Konami game, but I'll explain that in tomorrow's Famidaily with the next game that they published. F-1 Sensation is also the last Famicom racing game. Almost 10 years ago, when HAL developed F-1 Race for Nintendo, fast and smooth racing like this on a console was almost unheard of. For F-1 Race to look this good was a revolution. Moving forward, the Famicom got quite a few racing games, though the technical quality seemed to stall out around the release of Highway Star. And Formula 1 based racing was the single most popular genre of racing games on the Famicom. There's 9 different Famicom games featuring Formula 1 racing, and Konami's bringing the genre to a close with the best Formula 1 game on the Famicom. It's got flaws, one of them really significant, but it's still the best. F-1 Sensation is technically a follow-up to an MSX game called F-1 Spirit that Konami released all the way back in 1987. A lot of little gameplay features are carried over from that game. F-1 Sensation is also an extremely rare Famicom game, and as a result, it's extremely expensive. This is another member of the 10,000 yen club, that group of Famicom games where a bare cartridge will likely cost you at least 10,000 yen. It's also one of the cheaper Konami games of 1993. F-1 Sensation offers 2 different modes, Free Run and Grand Prix. Free Run has you just run 1 lap, while Grand Prix is a career mode letting you play out an F1 season. Before racing, you can choose what type of car you'll drive, as well as set up the colors. You can also tune the car, and the cars are rated on acceleration, top speed, and handling, so as you tweak settings you can see how those are affected. Though I'll point out that you can get your car pretty close to ideal in all 3 stats. You also get to choose who you're going to race against, and your opponents are lumped into 3 categories, A, B, or C. So this acts as a way for you to tweak the difficulty of the race. In Grand Prix mode, you first have to do a qualifying lap. You're also allowed to practice the track without it counting against you. When you're qualifying, you do 1 lap of the track with no other cars on it, and you get 2 chances to qualify. Your starting position is determined by your top time for those laps. And since it's not going to change after people run a 2nd lap, you can skip the 2nd qualifying lap if you're satisfied with your position in the grid. In Free Run, you always start at the back of the pack, and then you race. A accelerates, B brakes, up and down shift. I'd actually recommend playing with an automatic while you're learning the game. F-1 Sensation really wants you to juggle those gears. This is not a racing game where you reach top speed and then just leave it in that gear forever. I also had to lean on the brake pretty hard while I was racing. Usually in these Famicom racing games, letting off the gas is all you need. But here, there's a lot more speed management in those corners. And speaking of those corners, I've got to point out just how well F-1 Sensation does at guiding you through the track. You've got indicators well in advance, you've got a map of the track on the screen, and the track itself will show complex turns properly, not just turning in one direction and then suddenly switching to another. It's genuinely impressive that they display things this well. Another cool technical trick in the game is that there's changing weather. It can start to rain during a race, and you'll want to pit to change out your tires. There are meters in the lower left to indicate how much damage you've received, and you are going to need to pit for at least your tires in a 5-lap race. Pitting is handled by pulling completely into the pit lane, and then it automatically stops. You then get a menu, and time is frozen while you're in this menu. You can choose to do all repairs, or change out some of your hardware. Unless you've been involved in a major collision, I'd recommend just sticking to tires. Doing anything else dramatically increases the length of your pit stop. One annoying aspect to the game is that as soon as you see more than 1 car on the track, it slows down a lot. Then it just becomes a flickery mess. Unfortunately, I think the gameplay is best in F-1 Sensation when the track is packed like that. If you do well in qualifying and wind up way out in front during the Grand Prix mode, then it's just you and the open road. But in free run mode, You have to pull off some tricky maneuvers to get by people. And with only one lap, you really don't have a lot of time to climb to first place. It turns what could have just been practice mode into a very different kind of challenge. After finishing a race in Grand Prix, you get a password, but there's also 3 battery save slots on the cartridge. While F-1 Sensation didn't sell well in 1993, in the years since, Famicom fans have acknowledged it as one of the best racing games on the system. I'd go one step further than that and say it is the best. It offers a lot of options to make it approachable to a new player, but at the same time, you can really crank the difficulty up by choosing to play against A-ranked drivers. It adds just a touch more realism to the driving model than we've seen in previous racing games, and that's enough to give it a much better feel than a lot of them. It might not look like much on the screen, but if you were to play a different Famicom F1 racing game and then switch to this, the difference is really obvious. Konami is departing the Famicom on a high note.